Hi, and welcome to the Corridor Cast. Today's guest is Freddie Wong. Freddie and us, we go way back because Freddie actually lived with us back in the early days, before YouTube, back in like 2008, 2009, and 2010. So when his career launched, so did ours. We grew up side by side on the internet, watching the world change before us and influencing the platform that you guys know today as YouTube. Now, also, Freddie and Sam. Freddie thinks Sam is like the funniest guy in the world. And so I expect some good sparks to fly in this podcast. It's going to be a good one. We're going to talk about what Freddie's up to these days, his quirky hobbies that he has, why there aren't a lot of videos going up on Rocketjump, what happened to VGHS Season 4. Well, there wasn't actually a Season 4, but why wasn't there a Season 4? All these great questions and more on the Corridor Cast. Sit back, relax, stay tuned.
Literally, it was Father's Day, I think a year ago. And I was hanging out with Anthony Birch, who writer of video games, comic books, and has worked on some of our stuff like Rocketjump the show. And we were talking about D&D, and we were talking about, it'd be fun to like get our friends together, do a podcast, do a thing. And we just in the course of conversation, we realized that every dad archetype is a D&D archetype. Because we're like, yeah, like if your dad is like a soft rock cover band dad, well then that's a bard. You know what I mean? Like if your dad's like if your dad's a stepdad who doesn't ever, come home and is like a wayward dad, that's a rogue, And so we were joking about so we were joking about like dad archetypes working. And we're like, what if we did a podcast and we called it Dungeons and Daddies? And we're like, it's not a BDSM podcast, but it's a D&D podcast. And it's about like dads in our world. There's like a whole subgenre of this stuff, but like dads in our world who get transported into the D&D like Forgotten Realms world, but they're just real dads in our world with real objects from our world. And they have to rescue their sons because they're bad dads, and they learn about being good dads.
What level dad are you?
I play my character's name is Glenn Close, which is a guy's name. Yeah. And I'm right now a level 2 bard, which and then in canon I have a rock cover band, the Glenn Close Trio. And so it's a lot of fun. It's me, it's Matt and Will, Beth May, who's done a lot of stuff on our other podcast, Story Break, and then Anthony's DMing it. And yeah, it's called Dungeons and Daddies, and that's like the thing that I've been doing a lot of right now.
How long have you been doing that for?
Not that long. It's only been about a month.
You're a big podcast guy, right? You have Story Break. You have Dungeons and Daddies.
I just have 2. That's okay. They all, if you heard the joke, what do you call a collection? What do you call a collection of like crows?
Murder.
A murder of crows, right? Geese.
Flock.
What do you call a collection of 3 guys in Los Angeles?
A
podcast.
Oh wow.
So it's been fun. It's been fun doing like getting more into like audio editing and sort of that stuff, because it's a heavy sort of thing. And here's a weird thing that I found when we're recording these D&D sessions. Everyone has lag. Huh. Like you'll do a thing where it's like because everyone's trying to like be in character and react to the roles and stuff. So when you listen to a conversation, there's like, no, I measured it, like 250 to 300 milliseconds of lag as you process what's going on, convert into your character, and then respond back in character.
Wow.
Then when you're playing it, you don't notice it. But then when you listen, you're just like, why is everyone pausing like in between everything they say? And you're like, oh, it's lag.
Wow.
That's funny.
It's in character lag.
That's incredible.
You have a lot of interesting hobbies.
I think it's because I get bored easily, Niko.
Is that what it is?
I think so.
Can't let the stillness of the universe creep in around you.
Well, no, because I always okay. Let me ask you this, guys. You have everyone's like desert island. What would you do to entertain yourself?
Mm-hmm.
What would you do to entertain yourself
on a desert island?
Yeah, desert island. You got nothing around you.
Sandcastles.
Sandcastles is pretty good. You could get really good. Imagine if Tom Hanks, instead of doing all his bullshit, was like, I'm gonna get really good at sandcastles.
You'd starve. That's the truth of it.
What about you, Sam? What would you be doing on a desert island?
I don't know. I'd be like using coconuts for bongo drums and humming until I wither away.
That's a good image. I feel like I could. I was like, I bet you I could amuse myself I bet you I would get really good at beatboxing.
That's what I'm saying.
Like that's one where like here's all the check marks on that one on beatboxing. Number 1, don't need people. Do not want to practice with people around you. Like you can't. Beatboxing is a private affair in your own bathroom in your own time. If anyone's around you, they're gonna be like, get out, right?
Is this a segue into you beatboxing?
I'm
for
very
us?
no, I can't.
Come
I need the
on.
desert island. I need a desert island.
I thought this is a great setup for just like drop on us that you have gotten
That I'm
really good at
insane at
beatboxing.
You wish, Nico.
I do wish.
No, I'm not good at beatboxing. But then I wonder too. It's like it's a useless skill. Like I feel like over the course of my life, I've collected a good number of useless skills. Beatboxing is definitely in that category.
Wait. You said you have collected that skill?
No. I'm saying would be in that category, right?
Well, I mean, it's
Teasing
basically it allows you to busk anywhere in the world.
That's true. It is like the ultimate busking tool.
Yeah, just walk up. Yeah, put a hat down and go for it.
You need a mic because raw beatboxing is a little bit.
Okay, you're totally right. The mic is really what brings the performance out of it.
It's true. You need that bass.
Yeah.
And then the moment you have a loop pedal, all of a sudden it's just like, cool, go anywhere.
Yeah.
What's the most impressive busker you've ever seen?
Um.
Like, who's someone that you've actually stopped and be like, where's my wallet? I need to pay this
So
guy.
I guess he wasn't
Wow.
busking at the time, but remember Sexy Sax Man? He's not the one I'm talking about, but do you remember Sexy Sax Man?
I do remember
Sergio
Sexy
Flores?
Sax. Yeah.
Who?
Who could forget those gyrating hips and
Yeah.
dulcet tones?
So Ivy and I ended up going to this like performance, like this small like art house performance that he and a couple other musicians were playing at.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this other guy, I think his name was Corey Jamal.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a busker on Santa Monica. And like it was in this like small concrete apartment room, but like the acoustics were really good because of that.
Yeah.
And he was insane.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
That's
awesome.
the best busker I've ever.
And you saw him in like a performative context.
Yeah.
Do you think you would have stopped on the street if you heard him like wailing?
I like stopping for buskers, but
Yeah, me too.
yeah, nobody else does really.
Well, people feel self-conscious about it. Where they're like, "Ooh, if I stop, I feel like obligated to pay." It's like, well, yeah, sure, just throw some coins in, man. Like, keep some change on you. You know? Yeah. What about you, Sam? You saying
Well,
good?
you know, it's weird. Like I would say it's more like my favorite busker, but it's my favorite busking instrument, and usually it's like a saxophone. In the
Okay,
sense,
yeah.
you know, like if you're a good sax player on the street, like you can play a lot of great songs. But the problem, it's like it's too piercing. It's like you want.
Yeah.
It's not like you're there for a performance. You know, you're going about your business. You're not at a concert.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
I feel like a dulcimer, like a hammered dulcimer.
Oh, like a weird
Like,
kind of nice,
it's the stuff you hear at
round
the-
sounding.
At the Renaissance Fair, something that's like a little lighter and tinnier and kind of blends into the ambient soundscape. It's like I want a soundtrack to my life, not you know, I don't want to take
Yeah.
it to a show.
Yeah,
so
it's
to
like,
speak.
and as you walk by, it has to be like, is that Welcome to the Jungle? And then you're stopped, and then you're good.
Hammer to the hammer dulcimer.
Hammer
Welcome to
Dulcimer.
the
Is that Hangar 18? Is that the solo from? Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Is that Freebird? So the most impressive busker I've ever seen was in Denver, Colorado. And Denver, I guess, is well known for buskers. And this guy was called the Zip Code Man. And no joke, you would walk up to him and he'd be like, "What's your zip code?" And you tell him his zip code, and he'd be like, "Oh, you live," and he would tell you where you were. And anybody, like around the world, he'd be like, "You're here. Oh, you're from here." And I was like, okay, that's impressive enough as a feat of memory. But like, again, zip codes can get very specific, right? Because like, you know, here in LA, like just in downtown, there's like, you know, a bunch of numbers for just even like the downtown area.
Yeah.
He was specific enough to be able to tell you, you must be near this cross street.
Wow.
And the craziest was an Israeli woman walked up and she said blank, and she said her zip code, and he was like, "Oh, you're from Israel. You're in this neighborhood." And then the third level, he was like, "Is this pita shop still there? I love this place." And she's like, I live like 3 doors down from him. He's like, "I love that spot. It's amazing." I was like, what? Like people were like, how
That's
are you
crazy.
so not only was he able to know where you were, he was able to have like a little factoid about like your region. And he was like, yeah, because like I talk to people, and if I ever hear a zip code I don't know, I ask them about it, and then I now have that zip code in my memory. And it was like the most impressive thing I've ever
That's
seen.
incredible.
That's
And
really cool.
He doesn't have like an earbud or something. Like,
No,
okay.
he just memorized, and that's the whole thing. Is just he just knows zip codes.
That reminds me of when I went to Universal Studios and like one of the like in character like guides, informational people, like was giving us a little rundown. Like, here's the map, here's the park, these are the good rides. So where are you guys from? And we're like, well, we're living in LA, but we're originally from Minnesota. He's like, yeah, whereabouts? Like, Stillwater. He's like, oh yeah. Do you guys ever go across the river to that one bar that's you know, on Sundays when they don't sell liquor in Minnesota because there's that one right over there in Bayport? And we're like, or not Bayport, but in Somerset. And we're like, yeah. Same deal, I guess. Maybe he's the zip code guy. Got a job at Universal for the summer.
Maybe. That's I guess what I guess zip code guy tells us is that in this day, this modern day, the most impressive thing you can do is just have a mediocre memory. You know what I mean? Because you read about guys back in like the medieval times, and you'd be like, these monks memorized these books. Like people were able to like have multiple languages under their belt and be able to recite whole passages from poetry and all that stuff, just because everyone was exercising that muscle because they needed to.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, right, technology has allowed us to externalize our need for memory. So as a result, anybody who's just like good, like if you you just remember someone's phone number off the top of your dome, you're fucking Merlin.
Yeah.
Already, right? These 9 digits belong to you. It's like, how did you, these 10 digits? No, wait, 9. Wait, 10. 10 digits.
Depending.
See,
11
I can't even
if you
remember
want
how
that
many
one.
numbers are in a phone number. You could be
Yeah.
Merlin if you just practice memorizing people's phone numbers.
Freddie, what's your mom's phone number? Wait, you don't have to
Wait,
say
I'm
it.
not gonna say this.
Do you remember it?
I do remember my mom's phone
Do you
number.
remember Jimmy's phone number?
I remember Jimmy's phone number. I remember my mom's phone number and my dad's phone number. And I remember 2 more. My old house phone number when I was growing up, and my best friend's house's phone number when I was growing up.
Yeah.
You still have those, right?
I think I need a phone so I can just
Because
do it.
it's a pattern memory
Yeah.
thing, right? I had a friend
And a
who's
little bit of music in there too.
yeah. I had a friend whose number was just right down the middle.
Oh.
It was he's not this anymore, but like it was like 285 258. It was just like that. It was like, that's cool. Nobody gives a shit about that. Nobody cares about cool numbers now because you just live in someone's contacts. I wish I had the ability to just be able to pull because like again, that maybe even more impressive than knowing people's names. I have a friend who actually can do that. The people who I've met in my life who are the most like politically adept are people who can recall your name like right when they meet you. And there's no like, yo, what's up, dude? Hey, man.
Let me introduce you to my friend so that way he'll tell him your name and I can catch it again.
Yeah, exactly, right? And by the way, God bless the people who like can feel that out and be like, and like somehow work themselves in third person in an anecdote about themselves into this conversation so you remember. It's like, oh, you don't remember me. Let me just work my name into this conversation for you. So I have a friend who's very good at that. And I was like, dude, how do you do that? He's like, you want to know what the secret is? I don't know. I was like, every time I meet someone new, I like get a picture with them or something like that, or I find them on Facebook. I have a Google Doc that is everybody I'm meeting, and I drill myself every night, 20 minutes before I go to bed, flashcards. And I'm like, this person, and in some cases, if it's like important for my job, like I'll have like a little note about like, oh, they have a kid who's at this school, or their kid plays like baseball or whatever, and just I flashcards 20 minutes every night. I was like, geez.
That person wants to become a senator.
Yeah. Or just has found how useful that is because people like it when you remember the name, right? Like Dale Carnegie and all that. Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's insane. I mean, like, it depends on what you spend your time on.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's like, what do you do before you go to bed? It's like, I like scroll through Twitter for about 10 minutes and then pass out with my phone in my hand. So I guess someone's using their time better than me.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Joe Penna's new movie coming out?
Yeah. Yeah.
He made the jump.
He made the move.
He made the jump from YouTube to movies.
And it's a great movie from what Rotten Tomatoes says. Is it playing yet? I haven't been able to find
I think it's
any.
a limited release right now.
Okay.
So
It's got to be around LA somewhere.
I'm sure.
And I think it is also hilarious that it is, and congratulations for being the better of the 2 Arctic themed movies featuring Matt Mikkelsen, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was
Polar, the assassin
Polar.
movie.
Yeah.
Is there a part in the middle where he plays instruments on like the various pieces of wreckage? Like,
But see, but you know what's interesting? Like, one, congratulations to Joe. I've heard great stuff about the movie, and I do want to check it out. And I love Mads Mikkelsen ever since all the stuff in Hannibal is like just. Have you guys seen Hannibal, the TV show? Brent
No.
Fuller. Mads Mikkelsen plays Hannibal Lecter, and like your first response will be like, certainly, nobody is better than our boy Sir Anthony Hopkins as being Hannibal. And then you watch this, and you're like, Anthony Hopkins can suck a dick. Like Mads Mikkelsen's bomb. He's really good. Yeah. Well, here's the thing about Joe, right? And this is, I think, I think the meat of what we're gonna get into here. Joe grew up on movies. We grew up on movies. We didn't grow up on YouTube.
right.
No.
In that's what we weren't watching growing, in school.
You see right through my segue
I
plans.
see your segue. We
Because-
grew up on movies.
Freddie, we're trying to make movies and you're trying to make movies or TV shows or whatever.
Well, let's be broad. Non-YouTube.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why non YouTube? Because
YouTube-
everyone's got reasons.
Yeah. Well, look. Here's the thing. YouTube. every website has a context, right? When you look at the website, when that context is established, it is hard as hell for that website to change. To wit, when you go to Facebook, you're like, cool, Facebook is this. Facebook, if you'll recall, tried to be like, we're going to be the #1 platform for planning events and parties and stuff. And they had all this stuff like invite your friends. Didn't really quite work. We're going to be photos. Facebook was so bad at switching over to photos that they're like, cool, how much do we need to spend to buy Instagram? We have to, because nobody thinks of Facebook as a photo thing. And in the same way, Instagram's like, right? And in the same way, Snapchat is like, hey, Snapchat could be a place to watch premium vertical video. No, I use this to I use this to text my friends. And by the way, not me, because I'm not that age, but that's what Snapchat was used for. So when a website gets set as its context, it's really hard to change. And YouTube got set as its context. And its context is personality driven, there's different aspects to it, but for the most part, right, like the stuff that when you look at who are quote unquote popular YouTubers right now, personality driven, individual personality types, right, on YouTube. That's for the most part what it is. And even the ones who are doing like content in a really interesting and pervasive way, like you're like Captain Disillusions. Even then, it's Captain Disillusion, right? In the same way, it's like if it was MythBusters, it would be it's Adam and Jamie from MythBusters. There has to be sort of this personality side in front of it. Even the primitive technology dude is a silent, avatar, but he's still in that, right? His personality is showing through in when you turn on the closed captions. And and to give you another example, right? Like back when people were still watching this and tons of this stuff, the hydraulic press guy, most of the comments are about the guy's maniacal laughter in the background as stuff is getting crushed, right? So there's that personality driven stuff, and it's also content that's not necessarily narrative, right? I think that when we started, there was that, and there were people who were experimenting with that, and for the most part now, the narrative that you see is first person narrative. It's selfies, it's vlogs,
definitely.
So that's a type of narrative, and I'm not going to discount it, because I think the way Casey Neistat can string together an interesting vlog is just as much a skill, and a skill that is born from his years doing more traditional film and TV stuff, right, and documentary stuff. That's just as much as a skill as anything else is, but it's a different skill set. Right. So when we got into it, and so when we talk about the context of YouTube is that. And I think it's hard, and I think it's started to solidify around that a little bit, and that's kind of what it is, And in the same way, Vine is 6-second funny videos, right? And you're not getting 6-second, intense emotional stories. Not that you probably very difficult to do that in 6 seconds, but that's what Vine was, right? TikTok, is sort of like the evolution of Vine, now, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what YouTube is, and I think that
is that not really something you want to be doing?
No, I don't. I mean, like, I think it's fun. Like, right, like you gotta remember, right? Like, I think for a lot of people who watch stuff, it's you're generally a younger crowd, and I think it's hard for people to sort of get that around, sort of wrap their heads around that, which is the idea of like, just because something is fun doesn't mean that's something you want to do like as something you want to focus on as a career, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that's fun, to wit, my thousands of very stupid hobbies, but. Right, like but I think it has to grab you in a different way when it comes to a career standpoint.
So what would you say you want to do for your career?
Well, I think honestly what we wanted to do is it's narrative storytelling, it's narrative filmmaking, right? I think that's something that we found, at least something that I found when we did Video Game High School. Now, I will note that I assume a lot of folks who there's a lot of folks who do not like that show, and who think that it was stupid, and who think that it was lame, and that we jumped the shark and everything sucked after that.
You got a chip on your shoulder.
Well, I think that's fair, because like, right, like the way that we were doing stuff was we were doing a bunch of fun short stuff, and then it was like, here's a narrative thing, right? And it's also a narrative thing in the way that I don't think a lot of people necessarily expected, right? I think when we always joke that the version of Video Game High School that was expected would be called Hardcore Gamer Academy, and it would basically just be like just like the shorts just strung out, right?
Yeah.
But I think but I think that when you look at that, and because here's why, because what I found with that was that like people still care about that, and I think it was much more gratifying from a creator standpoint to be able to like tell a narrative story arc with characters and to play in that world. To use a food analogy, I've often thought that like a lot of you know, a lot of short videos, a lot of short stuff that on YouTube is like, it's fun, but it's like popcorn, right? It's like, it's fun, but there's another thing, and there's always other stuff, and there's always fun viral videos coming out every other hour, right? At this point, it's like, check out this dance, check out this thing, you know, check out this Vine compilation, which is like good, fun, entertaining. But I think from the creation standpoint, it's a little bit dismaying because you put something out, you see it, it hits, and then cut to a year later and nobody remembers it. Like occasionally, right? There's some that people remember, but like, I mean, you tell me, right? When people come to you and talk to you about videos they've seen, what are like the top videos that people say for things that they're like, oh, I loved X, right?
That like in general?
Yeah, for Corridor.
Boy, jeez.
There was just a post on the subreddit for clock blockers.
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
that old one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah,
There's a lot.
John Wick, Nerf Team Fortress.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean,
Tiny Guns.
it's funny, like the most popular videos from a view perspective last year. Tactical Reloads for sure.
Tactical Reload.
Tactical Reloads.
By the way, we gotta make that sequel. It's Tac 2.
Tactical
Reloads. Yeah, I know. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah, but like I also feel like, I feel like there's still more that you've done that like for the most part don't necessarily like stick in the way some of those other ones do,
especially
right?
coming out with them like every 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I look at some of the, you know, the stuff that we were doing, you know, on the Freddie W side, and it was like, dude, you know, I think what was it called?
Well, you want to build a house. You don't want to just make like plastic
Cool.
tarp tents. You know what I mean? You want something,
and you can make some cool tents.
You wanna
And
build
people are like,
something
I
that-
love that tent. But you want to build a house you can live in from a character standpoint. Because again, the most gratifying thing from a career standpoint was doing 3 seasons of Video Game High School. And really
totally.
getting to dig into. And by the 3rd season being like, here's what we can do with this character, and seeing how people like stick to that and react to that. It's less about, to me, it's about being able to get away from yourself as a personality, which I've always hated, and putting that attention from the audience side onto the stuff you're making and onto that world that you're creating and onto the characters. When people talk more about, oh my God, I love this character, that to me is much more satisfying. Like when we go out and, you know, and Jimmy gets pulled aside because everyone's like, oh, you're Ted in, you know, Video Game High School, and like people are like, I guess were you the dad? Or something? I'm like, that is perfect for me. I love that. I don't like being the center of attention of that stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Why is that?
Yeah.
Why is that though? Because I mean, I feel like a lot of people watching the content watched you be the center of attention and thought that you were doing a really good job. But like that's what kind of drew them to it.
Yeah, no, I listen. I don't discount the fact that like that's what I think people get attracted to in terms of like YouTube stuff. But I think me personally, it's like when I was in like high school, it was like I was this big camera nerd. I was a big editing nerd. I love doing that stuff. I like putting my friends in front of camera and doing stuff with that more so than being. I don't know. I just never liked the.
Was it a surprise to you that you ended up kind of blowing up as a personality? Like, was that ever expected?
But I think here's the thing though. I think the personality that I play is a character.
Oh yeah.
Right. But it's a character to I think a greater extent than when you say a vlogger is playing a character, because we've met a lot of these vloggers, and for the most part they're playing a mildly amplified version of themselves, right? They don't turn the camera off, light up a cigarette, and be like, hey boys, you know what I mean? Like it's like they're not. They are basically that, and then on camera they're plussed.
They're
Right?
also not spinning around doing headshots and like freaking. It's like,
but the character
scenes.
I'm playing is a very like it's a very Charlie Chaplin-esque, like it's a doofy dude. Who, like, right, if you look at the narrative thread through a lot of those old videos, it is guy stuck in a situation that is like out of his, it's like Jackie Chan a little bit, right? It's a little bit like in over his head, like, oh no, like underdog kind of.
Nerdy Jackie Chan who happens to be really tactical when he wants to.
Tactical nerd.
But even then,
tactical Chan.
but like even then, but again, like to like dig into like the specifics of those character beats, right? Like even then though, like in aimbot, when like I finally do a bunch of stuff, you get a brief reaction of like, oh, cool, right? Like, oh, wow. Like, it's, you know, it's not like, now I'm the cool badass. Like, right? Because I don't think that's interesting.
Was that something that kind of formed naturally, or was that actually like kind of preconceived, planned?
I mean,
how did that come about actually?
I think it's always been a back and forth and collaboration with Brandon when we were talking about that stuff. Right?
Okay.
Because we were always like, I think we were always like in a situation where it was like, you know, what is interesting? I think we're goofy. You know what I mean? So it wasn't ever like, let's do the coolest, baddest ass thing that we can, right? Like, because, you know, I think that if it was, there'd be a lot more cool lightsaber fights. Not, by the way, I love cool lightsaber fights. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying we would have done a lot more cool lightsaber choreography. Okay, so like for example, I think that like it was always like, how can you twist it? How can you have a little bit of a button to it so it's not just here's a bunch of dudes getting murdered, right? Like, so one of the first videos that we did that got attention was Chrono Trigger, right? The time freeze shoe, that one. So what's interesting there is, like, to me, it's like up until the very last beat of that short, it's throughout it is kind of it's goofy, right? It's like I'm walking along, I call timeout, but the very end of it to me is like what sells that short to me. It's I come around the corner, I do like a cool close range CQB. Remember the basics of CQC, a gun thing. I shoot a bunch of guys, and then the reaction isn't like move on tactically, like it's yes, it's like it's kind of a goofy like kid like sort of thing, and it's that contrast of like here's a really cool tactical thing, but it's like, and this guy kind of thinks it's cool. It's like, oh yeah, I did it, like it's sort of a self-celebratory thing, and that's I think what that character is, more than anything else. It's being able to take a step back from that, and again, like I will say, throughout the course of both the Freddie W era and the Rocketjump era, right? Like there's been there's been experimentation with that, and I honestly think there's times when I'm like, I think that worked well, and there's times where I'm like, I don't think that works as good. I think that looking back at some of the videos, where I'm like, I don't know if it doesn't quite feel right, and I don't know why it's right or wrong or whatever, but it's just like it doesn't quite play, and I think the way that some of the older ones did.
Well, I think about that a little more, and honestly, you're just bringing to life the gamer archetype. That's really what was happening there. Imagine you play a video game, you scale mountain, you slay a bunch of dragons, and then you win a bunch of gold, and you're like, nice,
yeah,
sweet.
Because the reaction, because the reaction to that isn't now I'm this. Like that's the thing when we were doing video game high school, right? That was the thing that we think about a lot, which was everybody, for even to this day, they still get, I think, the gamer mentality wrong, which is they think, cool, now that I'm good at playing a flight sim, now I can be a pilot, right? It's the last Starfighter like story arc, right?
Well, I mean, maybe a little bit.
But the point is though, now, and even for us, it's like when I'm playing Battlefield, I'm not like, cool, let me join the military. I'm like, cool, I'm good at Battlefield. Cool, right. I'm good at Quake. So that was actually really important to us when we were like putting together the idea of like kind of how the world of the video game side of video game high school worked, which was, cool, they're good at video games. That's it. They don't need to be recruited by the government. They don't need to be real, and it's like, no, they're good at video games. And that's where that line is. And because that is cool. And that is something that is worth aspiring to. And so when we were looking at that, we're just like, yeah, this person's just good at video games and they are fine with that. And it's like, and the universe is fine with that. The universe doesn't feel the need to be like, and because you're good at MMOs, now you're going to do this real thing. It's like, no, the real thing sucks. We're here for the video game side of it, Yeah. But yeah, I think when we were talking about sort of those early days of videos, it was very much about how can you do something that's entertaining? Because again, like I think people forget too. Because I mean, we both kind of grew up on the special effects forums of some of the software packages that we have used in the past.
Yeah,
and we've seen a lot of like, let's be honest, Matrix ripoffs, and we've all been guilty of doing our own Matrix ripoffs. Like the amount of trench coats that were the amount of trench coats and airsoft guns that were sold to teenagers around the airsoft,
specifically cheap plastic Desert
Eagles. My goodness, the spike in sales, Desert Eagles, 1999.
Neo shades from eBay.
Do you realize how long it took for me to try and find the phone that clicks out from the Matrix?
Really?
And it doesn't click out like that. They kind of added that. Yeah, I know, right? Anyway, the Nokia banana phone, as they called it. But like, right, we've seen a lot of like cool videos. There's a bunch of cool videos, and to wit, there's a bunch of very good VFX like demo reels that people put together, right? Half of them are Video Copilot tutorials, specifically the bullet dodge one, but the other half, like some of them are really well done, better than I think anything I've ever done. And then like, and they don't get passed around. People don't sort of build a sort of thing around it because I think that there's just cool stuff online. It's just there's really kind of nothing there.
Yeah.
Right. It needs to really be something that you either grasp onto on an emotional level, either makes you laugh, either makes you sort of attracts you in an emotional sense, or it needs to be just like so mind-blowingly cool that you have to share it, right? But that threshold's pretty high.
Yeah.
So I think for us, because I think the secret of our stuff was the VFX were not the most intense VFX on the internet. Right. I think you guys do far, far, far more beautiful, more put together, stuff, right? I always joked when people were like, Freddie, you're like a VFX guy. I'm like, I feel like I feel like that would be a David Copperfield coming up to me and like, you're the best at this trick. Like the finger trick. I'm like, it's just the little thing. It's not my thumb. I'm just doing the finger trick with my thumb. And it's like, you're the best at it. It's like, well, no, I mean, it's just this little thing that we do, i.e. I feel kind of like a little bit like of an imposter compared to, I think, real, visual effects folks, folks who understand that and who really can do just anything in that world. And I think for us, where we put our skill tree points, so to speak, was more in like, what's a funny little situation or what's a funny sort of character that we can tell. And I think, by the way, that I think that works pretty well, because you look at right now, you look at what is the state of what is like narrative sketch comedy on YouTube. I would say it started with guys like Derek Comedy, and those guys like, who have gone on, Donald Glover, who was, early sketch comedy YouTube days, right? Who has gone on to actual success, SNL, those guys, right? Good Neighbor, those guys who have gone to SNL. There's that world of sort of more traditional sketch translated to online. There's kind of like a little bit our era, which was like digital, having an effects component, taking advantage of sort of online stuff, gamer terminology, sort of that world of sort of nerddom into it a little bit. And then you look at now, which is heavily into the world of like referential, topical kind of humor. And instead of a sketch about it, it is, I think it's like, it is the very excellent stuff that like Sungwon is doing, like ProZD is doing, right? But you look at in terms of just camera stuff, it's a first person camera. It's I think there's a lot of guys kind of in that archetype of like, it's a character, you're playing multiple characters, very minimalistic in terms of props, very minimalistic in terms of additional stuff. And it's funny because when we look at that, we're just like, man, I was looking at a lot of that stuff the other day and be like, man, like if I was to take that same idea and do a video, I'm like, I'm already lost, because I'm already thinking, oh, well, it needs to look like this and it needs to be this and this. And it's like, well, it doesn't, it doesn't really, because as you see what's being passed around, what people are watching is like,
this comes back to, I think, what you're talking about with YouTube, I guess, defining itself as a platform. Because what's that other guy, like Ian Krung or Krung Ian?
The guy who looks like an older version of my younger brother.
Yeah,
Jimmy.
yeah.
I freak out sometimes. I see a thumbnail, I'm like, Jimmy's? Oh no, that's Ian.
His stuff. It's like him and ProZD are like kind of a little bit similar in the sense they kind of tap into that narrative space without this like baggage of having to make it look like.
Well, it's a little bit Vine influenced, right?
Yeah,
it's a little bit like where the camera movement itself can be a part of the joke, like at the end, like a little shake.
Yeah, and even what is it? Evan Breen. You remember he made like
LA Turtle.
Oh
yeah. So yeah, but it's fascinating because that's a topic we were just discussing over here too, where we come from that film background, or at least the film aspiration. That's
aspirational film background.
Aspirational film background, exactly. Well, but you very frequently get caught up in wanting to make something look the right way, because like or suddenly that way of communicating through film is part of the joke, where it's like, oh, but it's funny because it looks like a blockbuster movie. It's like, hold on, like that's not a joke.
Yeah, you're right. The texture of film is something that we both have borrowed on quite a bit, right? The idea of doing some widescreen bars as part of the joke, and the texture and the language of that visual is part of it. And it's the equivalent. And maybe it is the equivalent of like props in a stand-up routine. Maybe you can just stand on stage and deliver jokes. You know what I mean? Like I think that
well, even like Logan Paul still uses that widescreen joke pretty frequently, in his vlogs. And so the thing is that, but I think the problem is that like it has that value, that film background, that cinema language has the value, but it has the same value as like an art exhibit, finding value in the fact that it has walls and lights. It's like, okay, you're right. It helps box us in, but ultimately you still need something there.
And the question is for the audience, right? It's about how the modes of consumption, right? Because I think for a lot of people, I try to watch the Oscar short films every year, and I have the exact same thought process, which I guarantee you guys have had too, which is you look at it and you're like, 34 minutes.
That's not short.
That's not short.
That's a TV show.
I'm not gonna, man. Like, right? Like, I think this is my theory. Nobody really wants to watch a short film. Like, if they're gonna commit, they're gonna watch an episode of TV. So it takes quite a bit to get someone to watch a short film, right? And I think that like there's a Vine influence there. There's a world where you're like, oh, we can just tell the joke, and it's about the delivery and about the person telling it.
Yeah.
And that still gets it across, and actually, that's more consumable. I can watch it. I can get on with my day. I don't necessarily need to feel like I can turn my sound up and I can turn off and it's fine, right? Like I think that there's something to that in terms of the way that people have shifted with regards to comedic videos on YouTube. And I think that, and I'm not saying that we're a relic of an age gone by, but we're a little bit like, a little bit of a relic of ages gone by, because you look again at the Derek comedy sketches and you look at those and you're like, I could see some of these maybe working. I think some of these do work still, like forever and ever. But then there's also a whole world from that sketch comedy world where you're like, oh yeah, like this would not really play as well, I think, anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, arguably like Gus Johnson.
Yeah.
Fantastic
Gus,
comedian, personality, actor on YouTube. Some of his videos get 1 million views. Most of them get like 500, 600,000 views. It's like, this guy is arguably one of the best on YouTube. And you think he'd have a huge audience for it, but that's just really not what the platform's.
I think it also depends, honestly, like right now, it was less so when we were doing it, but now more so than ever is the influence of Reddit is significant. When we started, dig.com was still a thing. And we actually got in, we actually knew some of these dig.com, right? When for those of you who don't know, dig.com imploded because they were revealed that there were secret cabals of information brokers who would trade front page time with each other. And they would basically round robin front page time. We met some of those guys and they were like, I remember at the time, they were like, you do some VFX for us, we can get this Jedi A-holes video on the dig.com front page. We're like, okay, sure, I guess, really? And then it was like 2 weeks later, they're like, dig.com is no longer a thing, everyone's gone. I'm like, well, that was short-lived. But the influence of Reddit is a big part of it, right? So you look at the guys that people have heard of, they're getting time on our videos, because their stuff is getting posted, right? Pure Technology got a huge boost as a result.
R/videos.
R/videos. So what did I say?
Our videos. I thought OUR.
Oh yeah, in a way they are ours as the internet.
Yeah.
But yeah, right. Like so, there's people there who, right? You can point to they're getting a big boost in influence from that, and that's a big part of it, right? And then and I think like everything, it comes and goes, right? They come in, they fall out of favor. I was talking to some of the Rooster Teeth guys, and they were joking that they were like, man, it sucks because like we have stuff I think that would actually work well on like our videos or like front page Reddit. But because it gets posted by our fans on our subreddit first, there's like, algorithmically it like doesn't go to videos because the main one is on their subreddit, which is great. We love it. But it also means that you're not getting a new group of people to it. So that was like always that push and pull, right? And I don't know. I think that that's a day-to-day grind. And I think that it's about how much time you spend working on stuff and what you want to focus on. And less, the older I get, the less I care about being like, okay, cool, what's the thing we have to be doing to be on the front page of Reddit? What's the thing we have to be doing to stay relevant? What's the thing it's like, because I feel like you're just never going to win that. Eventually, it's a tide, right? Eventually that wave overtakes you. What doesn't change is what got us into movies in the first place. I want to focus on what's a compelling story, what's an interesting way of telling this narrative, how do you craft a character and put them in a place that leads to good narrative consequences. What's interesting, like to me, that's like 1,000 times more interesting. It's more gratifying, and it's not something that you feel like it's a craft that you can actually work at, as opposed to what feels like an industry you have to keep on top of.
So would you say you're done with the internet video game?
No, because like at the end of the day too, it's like it's fun, right? Like in the same way, like I'm not done with doing thumb tricks, In the same, I think that like but the focus is, you have to be honest with yourself about what the focus is. I think that when we were doing, we were unhealthy when we were doing short videos in order to keep up with that. We were doing one a week and we were pulling an all-nighter every week. My sleep doctor has told me like that has affected you. Your sleep is now affected for the rest of your life as a result of that.
Wow.
And it's like, oh, cool. Was it worth it? I don't know. Right? Like
in what way?
Well, there's like, it's not healthy. It screws with your sleep schedule. I got weird sleep issues now. Like, I mean, it's a good side effect, but not necessarily as a side effect. I can fall asleep like instantaneously now. Like when I lie down for bed, people are like, "Oh, you toss and turn." It's like, I don't know what that means.
Wow.
I was going out with a girl, and I was like, "Could you time me how long it takes for me to fall asleep?" She's like, "Yeah, sure." So she was like, we were like laying down. And then like the next day, I'm like, how fast did I fall asleep there? She's like, literally, you stopped your sentence. I counted to 10 and you were gone. Like 10 seconds, I was full. So I was like, really?
Holy cow.
Wow.
Yeah, and I would imagine just like simply knowing you're being timed is going to mess with you.
It did not. I was like, all right, so let me know what. Yeah, it's gone, right? Like,
Holy cow.
Some
I mean,
people
there's-
consider that a good thing.
but there's other stuff too. Like I get weird spurts of time. Anyway, we don't need to get into my medical history. But my point is, it's not healthy to pull an all-nighter like that.
I didn't
for 2 years
realize
straight.
I didn't realize it would have like lasting effects though. That's mind blowing.
Yeah,
feel like
I mean,
I feel like you've had a few years of good sleep to try and like
Yeah.
recover or something, but no.
I mean, we were living wild though. You know what I'm saying? We were living wild. With a
Huffing
lot of
diesel
energy.
dust.
Huffing diesel dust and energy drinks.
Yeah.
Nico and I were living in a
Toppling-
hammock for a while.
toppling towers
separately,
of nos.
but hammocks.
Did you see my hammock stand?
I did. Great hammock stand.
Thanks.
I look fondly upon my time sleeping in a hammock.
Yeah.
It was good sleep.
They say it's a great way to not get back soreness.
It is. And also, I was in the hammock when an earthquake hit, and it was
Oh,
a
yeah.
very strange experience. But it wasn't healthy, is my point, right?
Mhm.
And it's not, and more than not healthy, it's not sustainable,
Right.
right? Like you're not gonna pull an all nighter every week until like you die at the tender age of 33. You know,
Yeah.
like.
So do you see Rocketjump still doing internet videos at all, or do you think?
No,
you
we still
are-
do, but where we've shifted is we're doing things that we can sink our teeth into a little bit
So
more.
so Rocketjump is more of a like actual narrative production.
Yeah,
company
so
right
like,
now.
I think that like for example, the last year we did a series called Anime Crimes Division
Mhm.
with Sungwon, and that was a lot of fun, and that felt like a thing where I'm like, cool, this was the mode, like that was the mode where I was like, I felt comfortable at home. We were telling stories in a way, you know, and again, like there was a lot of very fun jokes. We joke that like that show is a lot like. If you okay, let me give you my theory on stuff, which is I think in order to make something good, you have to love the thing that you're sort of making. You also have to kind of hate it a little bit. Like there needs to be a little bit of hate in there, like in the
Yeah.
sort of yin yang, just like a little dot of it. Because what that hate gives you is it gives you a little bit of perspective on it to be like, yeah, but this is I want to do it this. I don't like this. I want to do this better, right? As opposed to just wholeheartedly embracing whatever it is, right? I think the best, like when I look at fan films, I think the biggest problem, the biggest like error that a lot of fan filmmakers make is they love their source material so much that they can't see past it,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's really insightful.
And I think like for example, what's the best Batman film? Dark Knight, right? It's the Christopher Nolan run.
Mhm.
Why is that so good? Is because if you look at Christopher Nolan's a serious ass film, capital S-A,
Yeah.
serious ass filmmaker. He does not mess around, and he is like really intense about like his work, right?
Mhm.
You think Christopher Nolan looked at Batman and was like, I love this Caped Crusader. Nothing. I'll change nothing. I love it. It's amazing. No, he took liberties with it. And he was like, you know what? His way of approaching Joker, right? Everyone was like, when Heath Ledger was cast, people were like, fuck this. This is going to suck. Heath Ledger sucks. He's a heartthrob. This idiot doesn't know what he's doing. But I think Christopher Nolan harbored just a little bit of distance from Batman to be able to be like, this is dumb. I'm going to change this. I'm going to do it this way instead. And what you get is something that's great, right?
Mhm.
I think anything that you do, you have to have a little bit. So like Anime Crimes, I'm not comparing this at all to anything. But my point is, Anime Crimes Division for us was like, I love anime, but also deep down a little bit, it's like, there's a lot of dumb shit about anime, which is fine. You have to acknowledge it. You have to acknowledge that whole. So for us, that series is like a love letter to anime, but it's also like a little bit, come on though, right? This is kind of dumb, right? So we and Sungwon and Riley, who was also in Video Game High School, sort of that was like the show that we did last year, where I was like, okay, this feels like this is an online thing. This is for online. It works in this sort of online context, and we're having fun with it, and it feels gratifying to put together a little choreographed fight scene in the context of a narrative, and it's the climax of a character arc, and it's a lot more fun that way.
Mhm.
I think, especially with action, I think there's a lot of times action just on its own is kind of boring,
Oh yeah.
right? Like even the best made action scenes are kind of boring. And even when people look at like John Woo and they're like, well, what about this? It's like, no, John Woo's action scenes are crafted on a character level 100%.
Yeah.
The end of The Killer is about two brothers on different sides of the law coming together finally after an entire movie to do something righteous. And they're in a church, right? Like that's the kind of depth that you need, because it's like, like we could sit here and do like fun action scenes all day, but it's way more satisfying when you have it in the context. The Matrix, right? When Neo decides to not run and do a fight, like you're in the back of your seat. You're just like, holy shit, he's gonna fight this. And you built an entire movie worth of context for why that fight is important and why that fight is intense. And then you're on the edge of your seat when they're doing it, because you know what's sort of involved and emotionally what's important on a character level for everybody involved in that, right?
Mhm.
And I think that, that is like I think 1,000 times more gratifying. And,
Definitely.
And I think it's hard to get that context in a short video. I think you guys did an excellent job of doing that for the anime car race.
Oh,
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Because but in that case, you guys are borrowing sort of the anime ability to flashback mid scene, because as you're going, it's like you're getting all of this, ridiculous, but you're getting all the character context through the course of that thing. I think that's my favorite video of anything you guys have ever done. In my opinion, that's my favorite quarter video. And I have a lot of favorites, but I love that video because it also managed to get like, you're like, you come in being like, cool, it's going to be a bunch of like, anime stuff. But then you're just like, oh my God, it's a story about a kid and his father. It's like a whole thing there. And then you get all that all the way through, which is like, again, like that to me is quintessential good internet video. Granted, my opinion of that stuff has changed with regard is different than what the opinion of the Times is, but that's a good internet video. That's premium internet.
Thanks.
You can get regular internet videos. You can find regular internet videos everywhere. Go to Reddit, go find them, scroll through them, regular internet videos. But if you want that premium internet video, those are hard to find. And when you find them, you're just like, yum, I love it. But they're hard to find.
They are hard to find. Like I remember when you'd have like gems that you trade back and forth with your friends. Like, check out this gem of a video. No one's seen anything like this before. Now it's like I don't add videos to my favorites anymore because they're all kind of the same old thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot
they're like
of them,
memes.
Yeah, a lot of them will lose their context or lose kind of what makes them funny in that moment in a year or two, right? Like it's less so. I think there's something to be said for the disposability of Vine, that what's more popular is long compilations of these Vines. Right? Like, because again, it's an ease of use thing, but it's also like, when I sit down to watch a Vine video, I'm expected to just get assaulted every 6 seconds by a big visceral joke, a belly laugh, and then I move on. How many times have you started a Vine compilation and been like, did I watch this one yet? I think I've watched this one. Oh, maybe not. Because you're a little bit, a little bit forgettable, which is, again, it's like, I think I look at it like comics, right? Like in newspapers, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like Vine was a comic panel. It's a 3-panel comic, right? It's a joke that gets thrown in there. It's not, you don't compare it to a novel. You don't compare it to a movie.
I mean, that's honestly how I would describe the videos that you guys made back in the day too.
Yeah, like 3-panel comics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And by the way, 3-panel comics are amazing. It's absolutely its own art form. I think that it's interesting. When I think about comics, I think about, the OG, the hero of comics, which would be Bill Watterson, right? The guy who created Calvin and Hobbes. And when you look at what he did with the Sunday panels, when you looked at the kind of, when he got to the point of editorial control, the control that he had, and be able to be like, I want to do a full page that's a beautiful watercolor because I know how to fucking watercolor. This is what Bill Watterson sounds like, by the way. It's like, listen, nerds, I'm going to paint a big ass watercolor and you're going to print that shit. And all the newspaper publishers were like, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. And he was the only one that could get away with that, right? But he could do these incredible art pieces. And he pushed that comics medium in a way that nobody was even thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is like, that's a guy who loves that medium and also is willing to kind of try and push beyond that medium a little bit. And I think about that a lot because it's like, cool, I love doing online videos, but it's like, I want to do more with it. And I think you can do more. And I think, obviously context in the same way that newspapers as a context for comics has changed and is, what it is now in the world of webcomics. I think with online video, I just think a lot of the stuff that is popular and trends and is shared is less and less in line with what I think is interesting as a filmmaker.
Yeah. And everything changes,
Yeah, everything changes. It's not a good or a bad thing. Like, oh, it sucks. It's like, no. That's just the evolution of it. Because we jumped on the train during a period of that evolution. And that evolution, and we saw a lot of changes over the course of even the time that we were there. I mean, I remember there was a time when people were like, there will never be another vlogger anymore. And this was pre-Jenna Marbles. People were like, there's no more vloggers. Like, vlogging's played out, dog. Shay Carl got that on lock. It's played out. It's like, no, not true. Stuff changes. A new generation comes in as well, right? Different group of kids come in. The group of kids who are watching. I think about things, again, I've talked about this before, but I think about things in 4-year increments, right? Anyone who started watching our videos when we started to 2010, 2014, you're from high school to college at that point. And then after a certain point, you're from college to graduating college. Those are very distinct periods of your life. Even, you don't necessarily even have to go to college, but graduating high school, from beginning of high school to end of high school, you're different, right? What you were interested in is different, right? you talk to any senior and be like, hey, you want to do something that these freshmen are doing? They'll slap you in the face and call you a doofus.
Yeah.
That's how the kids talk. They'll dab in your face and kick you in the nuts and floss.
The only exception
How
is
many
Halo
dentists?
LAN parties.
How are dentists not getting on the flossing thing?
Maybe they are.
Maybe you are. I mean, when was the last
Do
time you saw your
dentists-
dentist?
You're right.
I mean, who knows?
I want to find. Please tweet at us. Please tweet at us. What's your Twitter again?
We never use it.
What?
It's Corridor Digital. We never use it. We
Tweet
don't
at
post-
me. Tweet at
Tweet
F1.
at Freddie.
Give me examples of dentists who have used flossing in embarrassing ways. Like, I want a dentist. I just want the story of someone's like, yeah, I was sitting there and he's like, oh, you've been, yeah, I see you haven't flossed much. I'm sure you do though in that the Fortnite though. You gotta do a little less in the Fortnite and more in the gums. Make sure you get underneath the gum line to get all the plaque and
I'm pretty sure
bacteria.
there's Fortnite themed dental floss.
Oh my god! Wait, really?
I mean, like, come on.
How is there? If there's
How can a $2.5 billion game not like license?
Can I look that up? Is that bad podcast?
Also, your dentist impression is like kind of scary close to a Hank Hill impression.
I'll tell you what, Bobby.
You just
You
gotta
gotta
search for that Fortnite dental floss.
There's the first answer is Fortnite dental floss dance. No, guys, guys, we just found it. We found it.
Oh
We're
my
billionaires. We
God.
did it. We found it.
Billionaires, thousandaires.
Do you know
probably.
anyone in the Do you know anyone in the American Dental Association? We need to get them on the phone right now.
Yeah.
Because we got ourselves the next $1 billion idea.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know any
Fortnite themed
dentists.
dental. Do you know any? I don't know any dentists.
Everyone's gonna be flossing. All the kids.
And then
I mean, they got like maybe 2 months before Apex takes it over. Then
it's true.
we gotta hop on that fast.
Gotta get on that train, guys.
Do you guys think Apex is gonna have any legs?
I love it. I played a little
It's
bit.
fun,
last
but
night.
do you think it's gonna stick around?
Here's the problem, Nico. When you played Fortnite the first time, if someone asked you that question, you'd be like, no.
Nico, I don't bet on horses. I ride them. Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh, that's got to be chiseled on your gravestone, right?
There we go. I'm quoting that.
Oh my god, yeah.
That's a good ism.
That's a good one, Sam.
Just saying. Who knows?
Who knows is the answer.
There's
and I hope
there's
so.
a new video game every year that like becomes it.
Well, so here's a question
Minecraft
for you.
is PUBG. It's this.
Here's a question for you. So this is an interesting question. So all of the game types that we know and love now, Battle Royale, right? They're based heavily in the fact that they were modding
Right.
community, right? So Dota and also Dota chess now, right? Have you heard about Dota chess? Holy shit, my man! Wow, I've sent Sam into it.
It's so dumb sounding.
But it's the Dota variant that's sweeping the world. But right, they're all based in modding communities.
Yeah.
Right. So like Battle Royale type was because Player Unknown was doing it for Arma and then went on to do it for the zombie H1Z1. Right. That's a mod. And also like Minecraft, that was a mod. Like Battle Royale was like a mod mode, and Hunger Games mods, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you even go farther back, Team Fortress is a Quake mod. Counter-Strike was a Half-Life mod? Yeah, Half-Life mod. Right. So modding clearly is a way for people to experiment with new game types in a environment that is not like, that allows them to experiment and allows them to evolve it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So now that but I think modding is on the downturn. There's less and less people necessarily playing PC games, which is kind of necessary for modding. There's fewer and fewer people who, there's fewer developers who open up their games in that way. So where are these new game types going to come from if that life spring is getting plugged up?
Well, gosh, that's a great question. I mean,
Unity?
Gmod still has a solid community, that's for sure. And I mean, Minecraft obviously has a huge community. I mean,
Yeah.
Minecraft mods, like, gosh.
No, but game engines, Unity, Unreal, like.
So you think that people need to go down so game engines will come up to the point? That's an interesting
Actually,
point,
I think probably the real solution here, because
arguably they're already at that point.
Unity,
Yeah.
you can get that in Unreal for free, and it's like that's kind of the same amount of work that went into making the Battle Royale mod for Arma 3, like, is not much different than just hopping into like Unity or Unreal
Interesting.
and just kind of building out.
So really what it is to me, it sounds like those engines need to have very robust, easy to use like multiplayer stuff, right? Because like that, at the end
But
of the day,
that's how it works with the asset store for Unity. It's like
yeah.
you just literally can bring in a first-person shooter module that handles all your camera controls and all your stuff like that, and gives you your rudimentary weapons and items, and then you can just tweak it.
So
from
that's where the new sandbox is, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I can see that.
yeah. I mean, it's I don't think that fully answers the question, but it's in a way, it's kind of like the modding community. It's like the door swung open in a much wider way.
Yeah.
I feel like honestly, I feel like the biggest thing that we've seen change in video games in the past year to 2 years here is learning to give your character's life some stakes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like-
in the multiplayer context.
Right.
We were talking about this. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, like learning to figuring out a way to make drama behind your death. Because I mean, I've talked about this before, but the gameplay of a game like Halo, where you can just run and die, respawn, or Call of Duty, like those are literally just go in and spar and see how many people you can punch before you get punched.
Yeah.
And you can maybe punch one or two. You know?
And then the older you get, the closer that is to 0 than it is to 1.
Right. Now think of an army where the soldiers just run in and see how many people they can shoot before they get shot. Like,
right.
that's not how tactics work.
Right.
And you can't have tactics in that situation. You can only have
Yeah,
tactics when you have value to your character's
when you
life.
have value to your life.
Yeah, and battle royale modes brought that. They brought value to your character's life. It was your life that you're playing for. It's
And
not for kills.
there's a gradient, right? Because
Right.
like when you talked about DayZ, it was on the far extreme because you lose everything, you've invested X hours, everything is gone. That's the far end extreme.
Mhm.
Battle royale is like cool, you lose 40 minutes if you're waiting to the end, but you're starting afresh. Your death is permanent within the context of this game time. Yeah.
Right, and arguably that's why we spent so much time playing Escape from Tarkov.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
so
because
that-
Tarkov actually does that. A little RPG with a bit of permadeath, a little bit in there, all of a sudden becomes really like, oh shit, like I can't die.
yeah. Well, you can't do realistic gun simulation
That's true.
if you're not going to simulate the value of life.
That's true. Because people do act like I remember hearing about talking to some of our friends who have been in the shit, so to speak, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you don't just rush in. It's because you don't want to die." And yeah, you're right.
Well,
yeah.
but here's the thing, though. There's one last element which Tarkov doesn't manage to do, and that is the element of deciding to not kill people.
That's true.
Because right now all these games are simply like,
the reward is 100% kill this person.
yes, exactly. And I still have never played a multiplayer game that gives you the option to shoot anyone, and then also gives you like really good reason to not do that too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because I feel like, I mean, or maybe that's just like people, right? It's just like, dude, everyone just secretly wants to just murder everyone. I mean, who knows? But I just
But no, that's a good point. There is it's a reward system, right?
Yeah.
The rewards in like even in Tarkov, it's like it's the risk reward is too great. It's like, cool, I could not kill this person, or if I kill them, I get their dog tag or whatever equipment they have, and that's worth it versus them shooting me in the back and I lose everything.
right.
yeah. Well, I wouldn't, and maybe in a basic sense, it's because the games, we're not dealing with games programmed to really get that far, because effectively killing someone is action and not killing them is inaction, and you don't play games for inaction. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know where that goes. But
All I know is that I'm waiting for somebody to make a King of the Hill video game based on the Arma mod.
I'm waiting for someone to make a King of the Hill game based on the King of the Hill universe. So it's like Hank is on top of it. Oh, got it. You got to collect propane.
King of the Hill would be awesome.
King of the Hill would be good.
For those not familiar with King of the Hill, it's an awesome Arma 3 mod. You should check it out. But basically, it's basically a game where there's like a huge city, and then there's multiple spawn points that are miles away from that city where that battle zone is, and you have respawns. But the way you get to that city is especially cool because you're basically buying and purchasing choppers, jeeps, vehicles, and so the journey to the battle zone is half the fun in the game.
Yeah.
And is King of the Hill, I'm trying to think, where was the first King of the Hill mod? Or sorry, game type. I think
It's Arma 2.
I think it's Myth the Fallen Lords.
Really?
Yeah.
I played a little bit of Myth back.
I like
Well,
Myth.
actually, no, Tribes.
Tribes?
Tribes.
Ooh. Internet historians got to back us up on this one. I'm going to put it
because
down as
in
Myth.
Tribes, basically, you would spawn in, and there would be like
It was, you're right.
There'd be
you're
like
right.
these carriers, drop ships that would hold up like 5 to 10 people. You all hop in, you fly over to the fight.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of it's the shuttling of players into battle. But I mean, what I think makes that fun though is that there's not like you don't spawn behind someone or people are spawning near you.
Yeah.
It's like the only way people are getting to this battlefield is by like some other means of like physical transportation.
Yeah. I guess the King of the Hill would have like pickup trucks.
Yeah.
Butane
propane bombs.
Like lawn chairs.
Just like fences.
Lots of fences. You build fences. Take 'em down.
Sunburns.
Just a really unauthorized King of the Hill mod.
The longer your character stays alive, the worse the sunburn gets.
Very good.
Why didn't you guys make a season 4 of VGHS?
Why did we not make a season 4 of VGHS? Well, so there's a whole list of reasons, but the long story short is I think that the character story we wanted to tell and that arc was about high school and high school romances. Like the thing that we wanted to kind of really get across, which is a feeling that it's hard to, like, I think if you never experienced it in high school, like you will, if, you know, here's what it is. It's like, it's the idea that like, you know, people are their own thing. And just because you want something from someone at that time doesn't mean they're going to go for it, right? That's why Brian and Jane do not get together. And it's the story is not about Brian finding the love of his life because it's high school. She probably isn't. And she has her own aspirations and dreams and she's going to pursue those. And that's the time to, you know, right? That's high school. It's the time to do it. It's not that he finds the love of his life. It's that he finds friends because we start with him in season 1 as a total loner, friendless loser who's getting bullied by arguably bigger losers than he is, right? But the ending is him finding friends and finding that family. And that is that arc of that character. That's the story from beginning to end of who that person is, right? It's in the same way that Harry Potter finds his family at the end of it. It's not that Harry Potter finds a hot girl and totally gets to make out with her at the end of Harry Potter. It's like, no, it's that he has a family and he has friends. And that's the arc that we want to tell for him. And also I think for her, it's also one, for Jenny, it's about reconciling with, you know, sort of the pressures of her mother and then becoming her own person in that way and understanding that aspect about her. So from a character story standpoint, we told the story that we wanted to tell. Now, that's not to say that there's not stuff that we couldn't still not do in the universe. We did on Story Break, we did we're part of the Max Fun Network on Story Break. We did a bonus episode for, let's say we had to do season 4. What would we do? Mm-hmm. What would the character conflicts be? And then the one that we came up with would be like, okay, the fun kind of sitcom-esque story that could work if we continued it would be like around Jimmy's character, around Ted. And we're like, oh, here's what it would be. It would be Freddie, Ted's father, had another kid, and then Jimmy's next of kin, so now he has to raise a child in high school. We're like, but like again, it's, you know, it's fun, it's like kind of goofy, but it's not like it's not a character story in the sense that, you know, we were. It's a very fun episode because we get into like a lot of jokey stuff in terms of like what could happen. But that's like the story we want to tell. And I think when we look at that universe too, because everyone's like, why didn't you do video game college? One is I think you have to be true to how, like, obviously we're playing in a fantasy world with professional video games. And that was the thing I think that was a big distinction with Video Game High School. A lot of people are like, oh, it's a sci-fi show. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a fantasy show that has a lot of, you know, sort of sci-fi elements to it. But if it's mostly a fantasy show, it's a show about what if. Because the real world of professional video game playing kind of sucks, right? Like you have to be part of a crew. You have to be in a house and you're training, you're getting up early, you're working out, then you're playing League for 8 hours and you're training with your teammates and you all go to tournaments and the tournament prize pots are okay and you live in the middle of Utah because that's where the fast internet is and that's your life. And like, cool, like, you know, but that's not the fantasy is it's Harry Potter, right? Mm-hmm. It would be like as if wizards were like, okay, but magic is like really segmented and you can only do it in these government jobs. No, it's like the fantasy is it's a giant, you know, ridiculous over the top world, and that's what we were portraying. So there's a lot of stuff I think we still want to do in that. So again, we're the world of TV and the world of movies, the gears churn slower than YouTube. Like we have a animated show pitch that we are working with Titmouse, the guys who did Metalocalypse, whole bunch of stuff.
Oh, cool.
And we've been going around with that. Like, so there's versions of that story that we want to tell, but then I think any additional version has to be one true to the world of video games, which is video game college. Like, let's be honest. If you're college age, you're a coach.
Mhm.
When you look at the pro teams, like the guys who are coaches are like 20s, right? Like they're old. You're old when you're college age when it comes to video games. So it doesn't make sense to be like, oh, we're in college. And it's also like, I don't think that there's like you have to think about the type of story you're going to tell, right? I think a high school story is a perfect story of like coming of age and discovering yourself and finding friends and figuring out who you are in this world. Whereas college, you look at the famous sort of stories of that, it's less about that. It's less about you're not coming of age necessarily, in college I'm just off the top of my head. I'm like, what do you have? You have Porky's, you have like the comedies of the 80s that are set in college. But then like high school, you have your Harry Potters, you have all your formulative sort of hero story types of stuff in fantasy, like kind of end up at that age range. So it's like college is just like, I just don't think there's anything interesting there. Whereas I think when we looked at high school, we're like, there's a lot of interesting things we want to explore. And for people who have stuck along with Video Game High School and saw season 2 and 3, there's stuff we get into that is like about high school. Like, for example, one of the big arcs in season 3 was the death of a parent, right? And how weird that is. I had that happen to me. I experienced that in high school. Matt experienced that in high school. Like where you have someone that and their parent dies, and like it's wild. I don't know if you guys have that in high school. It's a strange experience because it's like you think in high school everything's it's fun, it's invincible, and then here's the real world and life coming in at you in a way that you don't expect. And it's just interesting, and we really wanted to explore that in an episode of Video Game High School, right? And the idea of like the temporariness of teen romances in high school, and how it can seem like the most important thing, and how like when you look back at it, it's like, oh, that was fun, and it was like a little bit of it wasn't that important really, or wasn't that the meaning of it was way more when you were a kid than you are when you look at it now. There's a lot of stuff that you can explore in that high school context. So we still want to live in that world. I think it's much more fun in the idea of like high school, and the idea of that sort of that time period being like a transitional time for people is really fun. So we have ideas. And I think a lot of them tend to be more in line with, I think a little bit more in line with what the way video game pro gaming has become now. So we have ideas for continuation, stuff that's still playing in the universe. But I think when it comes to those main characters, especially sort of Brian and Jay, those main characters, I think that story is told. And not to say that they can't show up later and be sort of fun color in sort of continuations of Video Game High School. But I think from a character story standpoint, I think that's where we're happy with where we ended up with it.
Gotcha. What's the biggest challenge you're facing these days to trying to get more shows off the ground?
Here's the biggest challenge, folks. We did a lot of stuff on YouTube. We did a lot of stuff web series wise. We set records for crowdfunding. We did a web series and blah 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 blah. Who cares? Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah,
that's what it is. Sorry. Here's the hard lesson that I've learned over the last few years, which is context is everything. If we decided to split off back in 2012, let's say, and there's a alternate version of us, right? And they're also having a podcast right now. Alternate versions of us, where we all decided to go down the direct-to-DVD horror movie route, which we were all embroiled in back in around 2009, 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided to all just be like, fuck it, let's make movies, feature films that are cheap and can turn a profit. Those alternate reality versions of ourselves are having a better career in Hollywood right now than us. Because the fact is, when people look at your past work, they look at our stuff and they're like, oh, you guys have done some stuff on YouTube? What? YouTube, the thing where that guy recorded a video of a dead dude? Oh, YouTube, the thing my kid watches, and it's like there's that, what, PewDiePie, and he like talks, what?
Yeah, the stigma's never left.
The stigma's never left. So anything you've done in this context, nobody cares. Because at the end of the day, there's only two things that matter in doing stuff in the traditional Hollywood sense, which is, did you make anyone any money? Did you win anybody any awards?
Mm-hmm.
And again, right, in the traditional sense, people are like, well, don't do the traditional sense. It's like, well, but like, it's easier said to be like, oh, just don't do it traditionally. Because fundamentally, there's a lot of things when you get into the details of it that still tie you to some degree of traditional approach. For example, if you said don't do it traditionally, well, you could go anywhere. Cool. Where are you getting actors? Because like it or not, every actor knows that money is in Los Angeles. That's how they can make a living. They can get a commercial. They can get roles in Los Angeles. So Los Angeles is kind of where actors need to be. So if you're going anywhere else and you want to use any actor, you're either pulling from your local population, who, if they're good, they've probably gone to Los Angeles, or you have to fly them from Los Angeles, which is just an additional cost that you're just paying now in order to handle that, right? So there's a lot of stuff like that, right? It's crew. It's, sure, you can shoot anywhere, but crew, cast, a lot of these sort of like the fun. You can't make a movie without. I mean, you need movies for the most part. You need people, and so those sort of modes are sort of like kind of set. And yeah, you could again. Tyler Perry has done this to an amazing extent, right? He's set up in Georgia, and he's like, I'm doing my own thing. I'm making my own studio in Georgia. I'm doing all this, and he was able to do that, right? He also before he did that, he made a bunch of movies that made a bunch of money, and were profitable. So that's the hard part right now is that I always feel like we're in between. We're in between the world. Like I feel like I have more experience behind camera and I have more experience like directing actors and doing that work than most people walking into Sundance and selling their movies. But that experience is meaningless unless it's applied in that context and that sort of other way. So in a weird way, it feels like when we're talking about doing a feature film, we're talking about TV, even though we did like a couple of Hulu shows, right? But you did a couple of Hulu shows, but the way that world works is like, too bad you're not, some known showrunner, and you didn't get tons and tons. Your shows didn't get all 4 or 5th seasons. Mm. You're not known in that way. It's harder for you to put yourself out there like that. So when we talk about even feature films, it's like nobody's walking up to us and being like, "Here's a movie, we want you to direct that." It's like, no. You, as far as those people are concerned, we're unproven entities. Mm-hmm. So in a way, it feels a lot like we're back at square one, having to prove ourselves. We're back at square one with actual experience, and I think that's helpful, right? Way more so than anyone else. If we were coming in new to it, but it does feel like we got to kind of prove ourselves all over again, right? I'm sure you guys have sort of felt that a little bit to an extent, right?
Which is maybe kind of what's kept us doing YouTube, is because part of me doesn't like the idea of going out there and trying to like scratch it from the dirt again,
Yeah.
I kind of wanted, I can do whatever I want here.
Right.
To a degree, obviously I get the lights on, but I can make videos, and they can be my videos, and I can control when they come out and what they're going to be. And my budgets aren't big, but at the same time, I still have plenty of resources that would otherwise be expensive if I was starting from actual
scratch,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
And maybe like when I look back at our past experiences doing long form content, the ones that stand out are Battlefield Rush,
right,
and Lifeline, and they both had their variety of challenges. But Rush was honestly a bunch of fun. The challenge with Rush was the Battlefield IP,
right,
which fell apart at the last second. That's why it's inspired by Battlefield.
It was also, it was just a constant strain on the production from day one.
Well, because at the end of the day, you're like it or not, right? You're secretly doing a commercial, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the brand world, which has evolved over the years, but that's what that ends up being. And so you're still beholden to those needs and their requests, which oftentimes has very little to do with, they want to sell a video game. They don't want to make a cool movie.
Exactly. It's hard to put your months, if not years, of work at the whims of some marketing director that's on the other side of the world.
Yeah, that's fair.
But generally speaking, that project was still solid, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I think the end product was good too.
Mm-hmm.
Lifeline was a bit of a different story. It still has its moments, but Lifeline was very much like in the traditional system,
right?
And like really turned me off to the traditional system. Mm-hmm. I don't really have a desire to go back to doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I have a desire to make movies and shows, I just not like that.
Yeah.
We just, I mean, we've said this story on the podcast before, but really, we got burned because the camera union wouldn't let us touch the cameras, and we're like, it's going on a YouTube channel, YouTube, and they're like, nope.
Yeah,
so they're like, oh, really? Like, it's so sour,
Yeah, we saw that on Dimension 404 to an extent too, right? Like, and at the end of the day, like, right, like I joined the Editors Guild in order to edit, right? And it was one of those things where, I was like, I think even Senzaki had to join the Sound Editors Guild as well, So I think that there's always going to be. It's a question of how you want to play ball, and I think what I found though is it all comes down to money. If something's expensive, depending on your point of view, but like if something's expensive, the more expensive it gets, the harder it is for you to do your own thing.
Yeah.
The cheaper it is, the more likely you are to do your own thing.
Right.
But then it's cheaper, so you have to kind of be scrappier in that sense. So when I even talk about feature films, we're in that mode of like, okay, it's got to be cheap. It's got to be like a one location kind of thing, which is where I think Joe, Mr. Guitar Man, to bring this all the way around was brilliant, right? Uh-huh. Brilliant in being like, cool. His movie out the gate is one that he can manage. It's one that from a cost standpoint is workable, right? It's not a big sprawling epic whatever. It's like no. Make a movie that get a base hit, right? Make a movie that is solid, that can make its money back. That is what sets you up to be able to continue that career, right? You don't go up there and just swing for the fences on your first time out. It's like get a base hit, prove that you can do this, and then you can find that later. But that's a journey and that's a process. And that's one that, I think that for me, it is why I got into making videos and movies and stuff in the first place. And the taste of because I think I've had the taste of what it could be. Whereas I think when we got to like Video Game High School season 3 and even like the Hulu shows, I was like, oh, it can be like this. Now with caveats, with parameters, but we got to that point where like, yes, it can actually feel loose in a way that we like, and I wasn't necessarily turned off by it. There were parts where I'm like, this doesn't make sense, and I don't like this. I understand what the logic is, and that logic may be applied 10 years ago, but it certainly doesn't make sense now. But again, I think to me it's part of the challenge of it, and something that I kind of want to get into.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think the movies that you imagined yourself making back in the 90s versus what movies are now, are they still the same?
I think movies as a whole changed, right?
Yeah.
I think what you see a lot of right now is you see a lot of sub $5 million million which is very, very cheap. And I'm sure people who are unfamiliar with film stuff are like, $5 million, that's a lot of money. It's like, no. $5 million is not even a single, at this point, half of an episode. I believe Game of Thrones is at 13 an episode.
Right. $5 million gives you Bruce Willis for 5 days.
Yeah, exactly. And then, by the way, if you're shooting only with Bruce Willis for 5 days, and you're shooting at the movie pace, the breakneck pace of 2 pages a day, that's 10 minutes of Bruce Willis, right? So I think that movies changed. You see a lot of sub 5 stuff. I think arguably it's probably pretty easy as far as the scale of difficulty. It's like it's workable to do sub 5 because it's like as long as it's checking certain boxes, you can make your money back on it. All the very good stuff that A24 is putting out, sort of in terms of distribution, like that's all kind of in that category. And then even stuff like Get Out, right, which started off as a very, very cheap movie that they kind of tested, right? The entire Blumhouse sort of horror model is that. It's like make it cheap, test it out, and then if it seems like it's good, then kind of put money on it. It's a very sort of conservative approach to it. Or you see giganto tentpoles, right? It's Marvel movies, it's all the DC movies, and the middle of it has sort of fallen out. And the middle of it, which is a bummer, because you know what lived in the middle of it?
Nick Cage movies.
You know what also lived in the middle of it?
Action films.
The Matrix. Action films, right? Like that was the world of the middle. And there was District 9, right? Like that whole world, like it's about 20 to 50 million, that kind of middle ground. It's hard to justify it. It's hard to make that happen. And I think the only people who even get close to that are like the Coen brothers, right? People super established in that world are able to kind of do stuff in that world because they're using the best actors in the world, and and they have the reputation of that. But I think that middle ground's disappeared, which is a bummer because who knows if it's coming back. So then I think the answer is right that you either adapt to it or right. I think you have to adapt to it. I think you have to be like, okay, cool. What can you do for 5, right? And then even like the Raid, right? The Raid and Raid 2, that's the answer. That's one of the answers to it, which is do it like they did in the Raid, right? John Wick is more expensive, but Keanu Reeves helps in terms of justifying that expense. If you don't have Keanu Reeves, you can't do John Wick at the level they did John Wick. But let's get a stunt team. Let's build relationships in that sense. Even first Deadpool to an extent, right? It was kind of that. It's still in that middle ground. So it's not totally dead yet, but you have to be smart about how you approach it.
Very, yeah.
Yeah. But I think that the world of John Woo action epics in that we grew up loving are harder and harder to find. Honestly, you're finding them elsewhere. You're finding them in Korea. You're finding them in Southeast Asia. Those types of movies.
Yeah. To wrap up this podcast,
okay.
What's the coolest hobby you've picked up this past year?
Coolest hobby I've picked up this past year. So I have been really into like Magic, and I think you've seen some of this stuff. In fact, back in the day, little card tricks, stuff like that. I've gotten more and more into it. It's a lot of fun. It's really interesting. The sort of the world that sort of like the infighting world of like magicians, because there's definitely the feeling of like there's old guns, like OG magicians who are like, you're like, dude, this is corny, and they're doing stuff where you're like, I don't know about that. And then there's sort of the new guard magicians who are much flashier and like hipper and stuff.
So it's
like
very much like Arrested Development.
a little bit. It is interesting, but it's interesting, you know. So I've been doing a lot of like magic stuff and getting into that. Is it cool? Now, Niko, that depends on your definition of the word cool.
It's cool.
It's cool. It's
Come on,
cool
Freddie.
if you strut it out and make it cool. But yeah, just sort of just getting back into that as a hobby. I want to get into some race droning with my boy Niko here.
Mm-hmm.
We may get into that.
I got one of those newbie drones sitting on my desk for you.
Oh my god. Oh man,
Thank
so
you,
cool.
Gift, for coming on our podcast.
Thank you. Oh my god, thank you so much. Yeah. So yeah, basically that. I mean, look, doing hobbies, people always wonder, because they think a lot of the stuff that we do now is off camera, right?
Mhm.
It's like you're writing. Like the end of last year, we finished up a script for a studio, and it was like that. I can't say shit about that. I can't even say what I shouldn't even say what studio it is, right? Like I can't even say do that. Like it's just we did a script, and guess what script writing is? It's not tweeting about it. It's not writing. It's not doing videos of it. So we've been busy, but it's not visible.
Mhm.
Again, the most visible thing we've been doing is our podcasts. So Story Break, which is where we try to break a story in an hour, and then Dungeons and Daddies, where we pretend to be dads.
And where can one find these podcasts?
Why the good old Google search. You do Story Break or Dungeons and Daddies is at Dungeons and hold on, let me just what is it? Story Break is just Google it. It's on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's on everyone's favorites.
If you're listening to this, you probably
are in an app or
find
a thing
find a way to get there.
Dungeons and Daddies, if you Google it, make sure you add podcast to the end of that search. Just Dungeons and Daddies podcast.
What happens when you search for normal Dungeons and Daddies?
You get a lot of search results. There's a lot of hits on that one.
A lot of hits?
A lot of hits.
Oh boy. Better get that SEO going, man.
That's true. It's gonna be difficult for us to climb up over the SEO that's already there for Dungeons and Daddies. But that one's at dungeonsandaddies.com or all the usual podcast stuff. That's the problem. Nobody has a good podcast. Where do you find it? Podcasts.
Sorry, this is a tangent.
Yes.
You reminded me. Do you still sit on URLs? Are you still a URL parker? Do you still go on like networksolutions.com every once in a while and buy sick URLs, hoping that somebody will buy them from you?
I don't.
Also, have you ever sold one?
I've never sold a URL. All my URLs are dumb URLs.
What's your most prized URL?
Oh, what was it? God, this is years ago. I haven't done this in a while. What did I have? Oh, erectoralcollege.com. Because it's like, and I thought like what I wanted to do with it was to make a website, and then it's like dongs, and then it's like the more votes, right? As they win on election night, the dongs turn red and blue. So no one wanted that one, and I didn't do that, obviously.
Well, yeah, it was your idea.
So-
No one's gonna steal it from you.
So Erectoral College is out there. I think that one expired. I let that one go into the sunset. I'm like,
Yeah.
just not its time. Just not its time. What about you? Do you have any good URLs?
No.
I know.
No,
Once
not
once
really.
they added .pizza and
Yeah.
shit, it just became not cool anymore.
It's like, oh, everyone's got one. Everyone's got exactly the right one.
Everyone's got like cool dot
Biz.
party dot biz.
I'm just happy we got Corridor Digital without the hyphen in the middle. 'Cause, like Penny Arcade, it's like Penny-Arcade. And it's like, man, why did they have a
That
dash in
fucking
there? We could
hyphen.
get Penny Arcade without a dash. And like we actually found the guy that had corridordigital.com, which is like for this like one corridor of businesses in like the Midwest. And you're like, can we buy it from you? He's like, I think I might use it. Like 10 grand if you want it. It's like, I'm not gonna buy it for 10 grand. It's just like it just goes at the end of our email address. Everybody goes to youtube.com/corridor. And then
He
a couple
died.
years later, a guy who works as like at like an internet networking place was like, hey, I'm a big fan of the channel, and I just went to go check if Corridor Digital was available, and it was. So I bought it for you. So here it is. I was like,
Wow.
So I guess I let it expire. We sent him a PS4 as a thank you. So
Yeah.
That's the real currency of this
Yeah.
modern age is PS4s and Xbox Ones. That's cool. Holy shit.
that's really nice of him. And now you can go to corridordigital.com.
And get all your merch,
And you can just
all your
say it.
stuff, all your videos, just live it there. Go into your settings and make sure you set that as your homepage so that every time you open that Chrome, You getting the big old eye full of the Niko
Yep.
and the Sam.
Yep.
You guys should hire me to do all your plugs. I'm good at that.
Yeah. Yeah. We
Next one. Yeah, let's do it after this.
Plug me up, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, Freddie. Well, thank you so much for coming out.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Always a good time. Always a good chat. Always a
Yeah.
good slam jam.
Let's make a tech
Two cool
reloads.
too. Wait, quick brainstorming session. Go, 30 seconds.
All
Okay,
right.
what-
So I was thinking it might be really cool if we're revolutionary soldiers and our reloads aren't like
oh,
reloading
like
pixels, but it's
super
like-
slow.
not
Yeah, so
slow.
it's like a prequel.
It's really
No, fast.
fancy,
Fancy, but
muscle
fast.
loading guns.
Yeah.
So like you're spinning your little ramrods around and like tearing.
So
your
it opens with like a little portal, and two cops get thrown out into the middle of the Revolutionary
You're still
War.
cops. We're still cops.
Yeah, and you're
We're
like,
still
oh
80s
man,
cops.
So you're still
Or we're
wearing,
fighting in a museum.
you're still wearing the same
Oh.
costumes. Yeah,
Yeah, the jorts.
Or
Jorts.
or it's a situation where it's like that, but we're in a situation where everything can be reloaded. Like
Oh,
start with guns.
It's like staple guns.
yeah, then staples. Then maybe it's like I'm thirsty and I need to like reload the water in my cup, and then like,
Oh no! You have to do the you know those water coolers where you're like, oh, you bring it over, like, "Ugh." But it's like you know what it is, you gotta do a tack reload in the middle of it where we turn the whole water cooler upside down and you swap out for a full one, but you keep the other one like nearby.
Yep.
Water cooler's pretty good. Just reloading everything.
Yeah, reloading everything.
Oh man,
That's pretty good.
At some point, a webpage doesn't
Yeah, at some
load.
point, we dive across the room. It's like I'm holding control and you're hitting R. That's so good. Yeah, just doing reloads, but just reloading everything.
Yeah.
I like that. That's really good. Yeah, webpage. Yeah, I buy it.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can get a blunderbuss or like an old Revolutionary.
Yeah, maybe
War
it's
thing
just
in
like
there.
hanging on the wall or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just another thing. What is your staple guns? Batteries, AAA batteries. You know what you have to do for the battery one? It's like a light. It's like need to reload. It's like you screw it out. You dump the batteries, and then you go and then just cut to like searching through a pantry, and there's just nothing. It's like God damn. And then it cut to like Amazon, be like AA batteries, Amazon right click, and then just like wait, and then the guy comes like, oh thanks, sign for the package, and then you continue. It's like you do a hard pause in the middle of it where you have to order some from Amazon.
Oh, that'd be great. And you can just straight break the fourth wall, and there's a part where you have to reload the card on the camera.
Oh, yes, that's so good. This is a solid ass idea, boys.
I think that's really good.
Yeah. So it may seem like we just made that up, but I've actually been thinking about this for like a couple months.
You didn't have to say that.
It's good though. It's good though. I'm in.
Cool.
Just name the time and the place in the Amazon Prime account.
Just watch out though. Leave enough ideas for video number 3. 'Cause that sounds
No,
like
you got to put it all out in the field every
Practical.
time.
everything. You got to
Practical reload. No,
Practic-
tactical 3 loads.
Tactical 3
Tactical 3 loads.
Man,
Beautiful.
how far can we keep that series going? At what point does it become like Fate of the Furious, you know?
They tried so hard on that one, didn't
9 of the Furious.
they? 9. You know what's jacked up about Hobbs and Shaw?
No.
Isn't one of them a villain? That killed like
Last time I checked, Shaw killed Han. Excuse me? Shaw killed Han.
who's Han?
He's the drifter.
The Drifter, our boy.
The Tokyo,
Is he from
the
Tokyo
Tokyo
Drift?
Drifter.
Tokyo Drift. Yeah,
Oh,
Shaw killed him.
what an asshole.
How did he kill him?
He murdered him in his car.
With a
you
gun?
see it.
With a gun?
don't remember.
Or via car on car?
I think it was gun on face.
Wow.
He murdered, and then no joke. The end of the last Fast and Furious, when it's like, "You're welcome at our table," and he's sitting and eating food, sharing a meal with Dom. I almost walked out of the theater. I was like, my boy Han would not stand for this. He got murdered by this guy. It's like, dude, Niko,
Freddie.
if I murdered Sam, would you ever let me have dinner with you after that?
No.
Maybe one final dinner.
Yeah. It'd be like I'd purposely make it really bad food.
I'm saying
salty.
it wouldn't be a barbecue. It wouldn't be a good looking barbecue though.
No, I wouldn't be like, Freddie, you're welcome at my table.
It would be full Coronas.
Hey, Niko. I'm sorry I murdered your friend Sam, but forever we'll just eat barbecue now. That's my bit. That's my. You know what I mean?
Maybe it's like
it
the
does-
muscles that
does the
make them
work.
friends.
Is it the muscles? Does
think
muscles
so.
transcend all boundaries, including those when you kill your friends? Maybe. Next time.
Let's all get ripped and find out.
Let's all get.
All right, man.
All right.
Well, it's
Thanks,
been
Freddie.
good.
Thanks, guys.
Good times with good friends. That's what I like to have in a podcast. If you guys want, subscribe to the Corridor Cast here on YouTube. It's a good decision for your life. It'll make it better. You can also listen to this podcast anywhere podcasts are found. Spotify, Google Podcasts, or whatever it's called. iTunes. Whatever else is out there. Trust me, the Corridor Cast is there. Also, go check out Freddie's podcast, Dungeons and Daddies. And Story Break. Story Break isn't as fun to say as Dungeons and Daddies. Anyways, yeah, go say hi for us. Tell him that he's a cool dude. All right, thank you for watching, everybody. Subscribe.